Exit polls revealed some real surprises in Florida and in Texas, with demographics of the vote broken down. Did the Democrats take the Latino vote for granted? I think we know the answer.
We have the perfect person to discuss exactly that question. Joining us now is author of T.O. Bernie, president, founder of Solidarity Strategies, and former senior advisor to the Bernie Sanders 2020 campaign, the one and only Chuck Rocha. Great to see you, friend.
Good to see you, Chuck.
Ooh, good to be here. It's good to be seen. I'm just glad I'm alive.
Suddenly, everyone's really interested in what you have to say.
Commodity now, my friend.
Where were they a few months ago when it might have made a difference?
I will say that I've gotten very popular in the last 24 hours, but I would also like to say that Rising and that you two knew about this and called this out, and I love to say this on air, before everybody else. Mm-hmm. So hat tip literally to y'all.
Risers
so let's get this on. I've dug into the numbers now. I'm ready to answer some questions.
So tell us about it, Chuck. I mean, I'm going crazy over here looking at Starr County and Zapata County in the Rio Grande Valley in Texas, with 30, 40-point swings towards Trump. But let's also start with Florida, which is that what went wrong for Biden in Florida? He lost the state by a larger margin than Obama won it in 2008. I mean, that's just incredible to me.
It is. And I think every election we learn something new. And the first thing that the community and all of us Latinos have come together last night, we've been meeting about this. We've been talking about it. These are the organizations on the ground doing this work. And there's one thing that we want to make sure people get very crystal clear as we talk about Miami-Dade this morning. If Joe Biden would have performed at the same level as Hillary Clinton in Miami-Dade, let me be clear, Joe Biden still loses Florida because of what? White people, because white people underperformed, seniors, college-educated white people all underperformed. They were at 38%, and they needed to be at the Hillary number of 41%. So even if Latinos would have maxed out to the bottom level of what I say is acceptable, we still lose the state. So I'm not sitting around on interviews this morning letting people put this on the Latino community, but I am saying now is the time to have a Latino reckoning. And I can't wait to be there for the Latino autopsy, but you have to take Florida, and you know this, you both know this, we've talked about this, and set it to the side, because Joe Biden still won Latinos in Florida. He didn't win it by enough. He didn't hit the numbers. That's all true. But you can't blame a demographic when the white folks only voted at 38 and we ain't even talking about them. So that's one piece.
We're not blaming a demographic here. Yeah, we're blaming a crappy campaign. Yeah, right. Let's just be crystal clear.
It's always our blame. It is never on the voters. Never.
So, Chuck, I am old enough to remember back in the Democratic primary when some old comments from Bernie Sanders were dredged up about Fidel Castro, and we were told, oh my God, you can't nominate that guy because he might lose Florida. What happened here with Joe Biden? They brought in Ana Navarro to do their strategy and their outreach with the Cuban-American community down in Florida. His numbers in that community were absolutely dismal. What did they do wrong? And what did the Trump campaign do right? Because I don't think it's enough to say, like, oh, there just wasn't a pull towards Joe Biden. I think there was an affirmative pull towards Donald Trump, an enthusiasm for him in that community. What was that based on?
Crystal, I think you're exactly right. And I'm going to answer that in reverse because I want to give the Trump campaign credit for what they did. And we love using this word in progressive politics, which is intentional organizing and intentional work. That's exactly what Donald Trump did. They stayed laser focused on these Cubans, and everything they did worked off of each other. And it started in this way as you kind of break down the numbers. Donald Trump started Spanish language advertising in Miami to these Cubans and Latinos statewide, for that matter, in the middle of June, while Joe Biden didn't get that start to almost the end of July. So he had a 6-week head start, and his ads were always never how great Donald Trump is for Latinos. It was always, can you really trust Joe Biden? Now, a lot of these weren't true, but it didn't matter because you're setting up a narrative of Crystal. You know this. You only get one chance to make a first impression in politics, especially when you have this unique ecosystem of these Cubans in Miami on these radio programs, these YouTube stations, and on the media that they listen to down here, where you have these talk show hosts who are then amplifying everything that the Trump's doing, even though some of it's misinformation. Much of it's not true. There was not an alternative narrative over that time period. I remember my friend who's the former Congressman Joe Garcia from Miami calling me in July saying, Chuck, we've got to get somebody down here to compete in this narrative. We don't have to go after everything, but we need to be on every one of these shows, at least debating this socialist thing to make sure that they understand that there's more than one argument to this.
And Chuck, let's also talk about Texas now. I mean, like I said, Zapata County, Starr County, the Rio Grande Valley, Trump is outperforming there by numbers I never thought I would see in my entire life. You're a native Texan just like me. What happened for Joe Biden? I mean, what happened here?
Well, the basic thing there is there was no money spent by Donald Trump down there, and there was no money spent by the Biden campaign. And what you have is Latinos in the Valley who knew Hillary Clinton. And this is an unknown a lot as much as Hillary underperformed with white working class, she overperformed in Texas with Latinos. That's why her numbers were better than Barack Obama, because they knew Bill Clinton. Anybody who's been in the Valley knows that Latinos knows Bill Clinton, and they had done work down there to build their name. They never knew really who Joe Biden was. And because there was no money spent there to say, this is who he is, here's what he can do for you, they just went to a known quantity. And that's exactly why you saw when there's no resources spent, you'll see a dramatic difference. You take that and what we just talked about in Florida, and then compare that to Arizona, where there was a ton of money, infrastructure on the ground, community-based organizations, then you get 71% of the Latino vote. It's just so unique to see how we are not a monolith last night, but in dramatic terms.
Yeah, and I think that not a monolith piece is always so important. We always want to highlight that. But also, you know, I think, and this is something you've been talking about here and other places for a long time, Democratic Party never really understood the Latino community. They thought they could do just this sort of like surface level identity pandering, that maybe if we could just put like a minority woman on the ticket, that would be enough to drive out turnout, and never really sought to understand that, look, you have a lot of cultural conservatism. You have a lot of heterodox views. People are not a monolith, as it turns out. And so what was the messaging in the Sanders campaign that really landed? Because this is one of the areas where you all were the most effective, the most successful. And what could have potentially worked in terms of messaging for a Joe Biden campaign that was left off the table?
I'm glad you brought up the messaging piece. And before I talk exactly about what the Bernie message was, I want to talk about something that nobody has talked about and I haven't said on air this morning. In Arizona, there was a prop on the ballot to legalize marijuana. It was Prop 207, and it was the number one vote getter in the entire state. And guess who was running that? Cesar Chavez's grandson, Alejandro Chavez, on the ground, organizing Latinos, getting communications out in Spanish, and it drove up the numbers everywhere, to your point, Crystal, about a message, something that you wanted to see that was legal. Decriminalizing marijuana, big deal. Well, that kind of dovetailed into what Bernie Sanders had been talking about with decriminalization, talking about a Medicare for all that was super popular, raising the minimum wage. A lot of Latinos in America, average age 27, working class, middle class, trying to get into the middle class. All of these narratives work, but Crystal, you and Sagar know this better than anybody. It wasn't just the message, but that we, listen to me, Democratic Party, spent the money early to go into those communities and spend money delivering that message and having a conversation with that Latino voter, which was really, really the difference.
Yeah, and you know, Chuck, let's finish on this, which is that they listened to Ana Navarro, right? I mean, that their thesis on this was completely wrong. And do you think there will actually be a reckoning on this within the Democratic Party, on the consultants and the people that they hired?
There was $1 billion spent by super PACs trying to persuade white persuadable voters with just the top 12 super PACs in America, while less than 2% of that money went to Latino-run super PACs. Of course, one of those is Nuestro PAC. But the point I'm getting at is that you can spend all the money, have all the superstars, have all the rap singers you won't do, have all the Zoom calls you want. It'll never take the place of investing with Latinos, by Latinos, into that Latino community. And I wrote about it in the book. Read the book. I don't want to live through this again.
Yeah, and by the way, all those Lincoln Project efforts, I'm breaking the table here, I'm so upset. All those Lincoln Project efforts to reach out to those persuadable Republicans, Donald Trump did better with Republicans this time around, the John Kasich vote, than he did last time around. So I hope someone maybe listens to you this time, Chuck. I am not particularly hopeful that they will, however. Always great to see you, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you.
Coming up, some of the battleground states in the midsection of the country are absolutely in a dead heat, and they will determine who the next president of the United States will be. Joining us next to talk about the industrial Midwest vote is national correspondent for The Nation, John Nichols. That When Rising's election coverage continues.